Welcome to Maths and Science Unpack. I'm delighted to have you here again. In this second lesson, we will be looking at BODMAS. BODMAS is an acronym that guides us to do multiple operations correctly in mathematics. There are some misconceptions around BODMAS that I need to clarify. And so it's important that you follow me through the end of the lesson and you will see some of the things that we have been doing wrongly in mathematics. And subsequently, we won't be doing such mistakes. Thank you and see you. Welcome back to the whiteboard. This is Maths and Science Unpack. We have already looked at types of numbers, a very short, concise video that gives a very clear overview on all the kinds of numbers you will encounter at this level of mathematics. So I will encourage you to go and look for that video and watch it before you come onto this particular one. In this video, we will be looking at BODMAS. BODMAS is an acronym that I will be explaining subsequently in this video, but it's very helpful for us to do different levels of operations in maths and in the right order. You will understand why it is important that multiple operations in mathematics are carried out in the right order. Okay? So that is what this video is about. We will be looking at BODMAS and why it is important that we understand BODMAS. Now, let's go and begin today's subtopic. BODMAS. I know by high school level or by secondary school level, and for those of us in West Africa, by the time you get to senior high school, you would have already been very familiar with BODMAS. But don't worry, don't feel bored because I'm taking you through this, because some people are still not doing BODMAS quite correctly. In fact, we are not even explaining the acronym well, because I know we took some funny names for each of the letters in BODMAS from our primary school days. And so I'm going to give the correct explanation for what BODMAS stands for. The first one is brackets. Brackets. Brackets are very, very useful in mathematics. Essentially, brackets help us to separate different things into clear categories so that we can solve them accordingly in mathematics. So brackets are very, very important. And that is the first of the operations that we want to look at in the concept named BODMAS. I know that when we were in secondary school, our teachers told us that the O in BODMAS stands for off. Okay, but that is not quite correct. That is not quite correct. The O in BODMAS stands for orders. Orders. And I'm going to explain what orders are. And that is why I said that you may think you are already very familiar with BODMAS, but it's still important that you watch this video to get the right thing, to get the right concept, and to remove some of the wrong things that you learned about BODMAS in primary school. Because if you don't, you will encounter challenges further into our mathematical journey. So orders, what are orders in mathematics? Orders are orders. In everyday language, order is levels. Okay, you must be in order. It means that you must respect the level that you are. Everything must be orderly. It means that if you are arranging a shelf, then you probably should put the more heavy things on the lower shelf and then the lighter things on the top shelf. That is order, the way you are doing things more structured, in a more structured way. So, what are orders in mathematics? Orders are basically what we call powers and roots. Okay, and we will be looking at these specific topics further on in numbers. Further on in numbers. Number is a very big topic in mathematics. Number is a very big topic in mathematics. So we will come and specifically look at powers and roots. But in BODMAS, the O stands for orders, and the orders are subdivided into powers and roots. Okay, now we know the rest. We know the rest because our primary school teachers did a good job by telling us correctly what the rest are. D is division. M is multiplication. A, addition. And S, subtraction. So now we know what everything stands for, but the first two are where I want to put much emphasis. Brackets and roots and powers. Okay, so when you encounter any mathematical problem and you are required to carry out multiple operations at the same time to solve a particular problem, you know what to do first. Okay, if there are brackets in that question, you will solve whatever is in the bracket first before you go on and do anything else. If you don't, you will end up getting a wrong answer. If there are powers at all in whatever you are doing, you will have to solve the powers immediately after solving the brackets so that you are doing things in order. Otherwise, you really won't get it right. Now, maths work on rules. Okay, laws, rules. There's a very structured way of doing things. You don't do maths anyhow you feel. You do maths according to the rules of maths. So in maths, we are saying that if you have to carry out multiple operations to solve a problem, go in this order. Look at the entirety of the problem. If it has any brackets, forget about everything and solve what is in the brackets first. And when you finish solving the brackets, look at the multiple problems that you are meant to do at the same time and solve anything that is a different power. Okay, resolve any different powers or roots. Resolve any different powers or roots. And then once you have done that, you can go on to the usual division, multiplication, then addition and subtraction. In fact, division and multiplication can be done interchangeably because they are actually on the same level. When you divide something before you multiply, or you multiply something before you divide, the effect is the same. The same thing goes for addition and subtraction. When you add something before you subtract, or when you subtract something before you add, the effect is the same. So for the last two, each of them stay in their own area. Division and multiplication is a bit flexible between them. Then addition and subtraction is a bit flexible between them, but you definitely must solve anything in brackets first. Then look out if there are any powers or roots or what we call indices. Okay, indices. Solve them second immediately after solving the brackets, and then division and multiplication, and then you are able to solve the rest. So let's look at some examples. Let's look at some examples. If I gave you this thing to solve, how will you go about it? We will not be able to solve this correctly until we are applying the concept of BODMAS. Okay, and not just applying the concept, but applying it correctly. So I told you that you will feel you know a lot about BODMAS, but I'll be introducing some complex operations that you realize that you really need to apply BODMAS correctly to be able to solve it. Otherwise, you will miss it. And usually in secondary school level mathematics, okay, whether you are writing GCSE or WASI for the West African region, or you are doing high school diploma or year 10 maths for our friends in Australia and Canada, you realize that some of these questions come and we shouldn't miss them because they are literally bonus questions. But if you don't solve them correctly, you'll be amazed that you'll be losing marks on the very easy foundational questions. Okay, and that's why I'm taking time to really unpack this topic for us to be very competent in solving more complex problems, but also the very simple problems that we can't afford to throw marks away on them. So look at this. First of all, we have something in the bracket. So we forget everything. I know there is a square, there is some negative and everything. Forget about them. What is in the bracket? Solve what is in the bracket. In the bracket, we have 1 plus 3. So solve that one. Don't forget the negative here. And then square. And then we keep simplifying and going down. So now we have 4 square and it is negative. 4 square and it is negative. Now, there is a problem. This is a slightly ambiguous question. And depending on what we do it, we will end up getting 2 different answers. So first of all, I'm going to leave you with a question. What are we doing next? I know we have a bracket, we have a negative, and we have a square. And this is why I was telling you that don't underestimate the topic BODMAS. And I'm going to explain why. Now, I can do 2 things. I can ignore this negative and take this as 4 and square it and get 16. And then later bring the negative and then continue with that. Okay, and that will give me negative 20. Okay, now another person can also reason mathematically and say that no, this negative affects the bracket straight away. Okay, so let me rewrite it here. This negative affects the bracket straight away. So it's actually negative 4 squared. Negative 4 squared minus 4. If that happens, negative 4 times negative 4 is actually positive 16. Now minus 4. And we get 12. Okay, so Two answers, both mathematically reasonable, but the question I want to leave with you, which of them is correct? So let's go back to the question. Negative 1 plus 3 square minus 4. What is the answer? What is the answer? Is the answer 12? As we got using this reasoning, or is the answer negative 20 as we use this reasoning? Pause the video and go and do your research. Go and do a 3-minute research and come back and tell me what answer you found. You can leave your answer as a comment and then we will debate. So we have the team negative 20 and we have team 12. Who is correct? And then I'm going to explain subsequently what the correct way of doing this should have been. So pause the video, go and do it and come back and tell me whether the answer to this question is minus 20 or 12. Okay, welcome back. The great debate. How many of you say the answer is minus 20? Yes? Put in your comment. And how many of you say the answer is minus 12? You also put in your comment and explain why you think it's 12. But let's solve this debate once and for all. And this is a very classical illustration of why we needed to do this topic before we move on to more complex topics. It's very important that we settle something once and for all. The debate arises from this junction. We got to negative and 4 squared and then minus 4. So let me just write that clearly. We started solving, applying the rules of BODMAS, and we came to minus 4 squared minus 4. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, so at this point, we still need to depend on BODMAS. We still need to depend on BODMAS to solve it correctly. And we will see which team was correct, whether the correct answer is minus 20 or the correct answer is 12. Okay. BODMAS still apply here. Okay. And that is one thing that we have to always remember when we are solving multiple operations and we are expected to carry them out in the proper order. So bracket, we still have the 4 in bracket, but there's nothing more to solve. So we now go to the orders, the indices, and we have this one here. So actually, between negating this term and solving the exponent, resolving the power 2, the power 2 comes first, okay? This negating is more or less towards the end, making something negative, okay? Whether you consider this negative multiplying this, okay? Multiplying the bracket. But before we come to multiply, because this is actually strictly speaking negative 1, there is a negative 1 here. But in maths, when we usually don't show 1 in certain situations, and when we go into algebra, I'll explain this in more detail. But strictly speaking, this negative, there is a negative 1 here. So this negative 1 should be multiplying whatever is in the bracket. But before we come to multiply, the power must apply. The power must apply because remember, orders come before multiplication. So we will keep the negative there, but we will go and resolve the order, the square. So the 4 in the bracket, the square actually applies only to the 4. So we will solve that and then we will go on. So first we have our 16. We have 4 squared is 16. Before we come and do the multiplication operation by this -1 to make it minus 16, and then we continue with the -4 and we get minus 20. So those of you who said the correct answer to this problem is minus 20, you are right. And let's explain why the team that said 12 is correct are not quite right. You see, when we came here, if you attempted anything that gave you positive 16, anything that you did that gave you positive 16, the mathematical reasoning is logical enough, but it's still not strictly speaking correct. Why? Because you attempted to do the multiplication, you attempted to do the -1 times 4 first before resolving the power, and that is why you got minus 4 squared and it became 16. You did something in the wrong order. You did multiplication first before you came to resolve the order. And that is why those of us who believe the answer 12 is correct are not quite correct. So now we know it's very important that we follow these rules strictly, especially when we are called upon to solve multiple operations in one problem. If you go in any other order apart from what the rules strictly prescribe, you will see that you end up with a different answer. And of course, in a maths exam, there will be only one answer for a correct solution. So if the answer was 20, although you did something with good intentions and got 12, you will not score the point. You will not score the point. So it's very important that we go strictly according to the rules of maths. I'm going to leave a worksheet in the description of this video, and you should be able to download it and solve and practice many different things. But before we go to the worksheet, let me just leave you with one problem to solve, and then try your hands on it, and then leave the answer in the comment, and let us debate who is right and who is not right. But look at this problem. So first we come with a square bracket. I'm going to leave this for you to go and do your research and come with a correct answer. So first we have a square bracket. A square bracket is also a bracket in mathematics. We usually use it to distinguish between curved brackets when we are using many different kinds of brackets, so that we know which bracket is in what bracket, okay? But square bracket and curved brackets have the same function in mathematics. So here we have that. So I know that when we started the topic mathematics or BODMAS, you will think that, oh, come on, we did BODMAS in primary school. Why are we doing it in secondary school math lesson? But now look at this problem and tell me whether it was necessary for us to go through this topic as part of unpacking numbers before we move on to other topics. So look at it and solve it. I'm not going to give away the answer, but what I can tell you is that the correct answer is only one. I can also predict that different viewers, different students taking part in this lesson are going to come up with different answers, obviously, because some will, although with good intention, will do certain things in not in the right order and end up with a different answer. But I'm curious to know what answers you will give. So work this out follow the lesson. You can play back the video, see what you really need to do first and why, and then use it to solve this problem and leave your answer in the comments. And then we will see where we are. And when you add your answer, just explain, okay? Give your explanation, give the rationale why you think your answer is correct, and let the conversation start. Sometimes when we get more interactive with our mates in the classroom around topics like this, it helps the concepts to stick better, because we can easily remember some conversations we had with our friends about a solution or about a problem. And that is one effective way of learning mathematics. So go do this thing, put your answer in the comment, and let the debate begin. But this is where I will bring an end to our BODMAS lesson. So just to recap, we are looking at the good old topic in maths. We are looking at the good old topic in maths, and we have just completed BODMAS. And where are we going next? So I'm going to bring our structured topic and subtopics. So we have finished with types of numbers in an earlier video. We are just completing BODMAS. We have finished with BODMAS. We are now moving on to multiples, factors, powers, and roots. It's very important. Multiples, factors, powers, and roots. There are specific definitions for these things in mathematics. And when we understand the definitions, we can know what to do when we encounter them as part of a problem. So that is our next topic. The third lesson in this big topic of numbers 1 is multiples, factors, powers, and roots. So let's make our way to the whiteboard and unpack multiples, factors, powers, and roots. Thank you. See you. Bye.